Hello, everyone. We are here today with Sara Letourneau, who is a book coach and editor, and she is starting a program to help people actually get their books written because we all say, of course, I'm going to get to that. And if you're anything like me, 15 years later, you still don't have a completed manuscript. So definitely looking forward to hearing more about that program. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Carolyn. It's great to be here today.
Awesome. So, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about how you got started doing what you do?
Oh, I think if I really want to, we can go all the way back to when I was 7 years old. Because I've been writing my whole life, Carolyn. I can still remember sitting at the kitchen table with a storybook making kit, writing about anything from going on adventures overseas to eating pineapple pancakes to talking animals. I've always had a big imagination, and that, along with my genuine passion for writing, has just carried me through all the different types of writing that I've tried throughout my life. I mean, I dabbled in fiction various times. I've written poetry ever since I was a teenager. In fact, that's still the kind of writing that, for me, creatively speaking, is
Mm.
the one that I engage in most often. That's what resonates most with me for myself. Um, I've written for student newspapers in high school and college. I could go on. I've read at open mics and even at a couple of poetry slams. But through all of that, I mean, I studied English and received a bachelor's in English and when I was in college, and I worked for about a decade in the corporate world as a technical editor. So through
Mm.
my professional experience, I've honed especially my copy editing skills. But I have always continued writing and studying writing, going to literary conferences, taking workshops, going to writing retreats. I've really made a point of investing in writing throughout my life and learning more. And um, throughout all of that, I've also had friends who are writers and who would ask me um, for feedback or even editing on their work. And the feedback I would receive most of the time from them was, you should get paid for what you do because you're so meticulous, you're so thorough, you know so much. And it took me a long time to really do anything about that. But 4 years ago, I started Heart of the Story editorial and coaching services because I decided it was finally time to start serving writers in that kind of way, and it's been a fun ride so far.
I love when that happens when the business kind of finds you. It just grows so naturally and organically when it's something that people have actually been asking you for.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's also very helpful, I think. Well, not just helpful, I mean, this is a vital part of doing any kind of business, is when you're passionate about it, because when you're
Mm.
passionate about it, the ideas come much more easily. Um, you're more motivated to do it. Um, you stay focused for no, I wouldn't say longer periods of time, but you're able to maintain focus on the things that you want to do, and it brings so much joy to your life. And that's part of that's yes, I do get a lot of that satisfaction and joy by doing and from doing the work that I do for Heart of the Story. But I'm also very happy to be serving authors and poets and writers, whether it's as their editor or as their book coach or a mix of the two, or even if they're coming to one of my writing workshops, as long as as they are learning something from it, and it brings their book to a better place than where it was when we first started working together, then that's what's most important to me.
Very cool. I definitely relate to a lot of what you're saying. I started writing with a computer program called Kid Writer Gold. Even though it was the 80s, I had a Tandy computer, and and then my dad would bring these notebooks from his
Mhm.
work that were
Yeah.
like bound and sewn, and so I could like write my own stories in there. But I also have found so much joy in service to others. Like, as much as I writing and producing things of my own, the ability to help other people get to their goals is so deeply satisfying. So I also love having a service history like that.
Yeah, it's always fun to hear from my authors when they tell me that their book is out, or when they keep me in the loop about where they are in the process. I've actually just had a couple of my authors who have recently published books, and one more, my very first children's book that I helped edit,
Ooh.
is about to make its way into the world. It's a really cute story about a little boy's first baseball game. So it's kind
Ooh.
so c and so, when it comes out this spring, it'll be very much in time for baseball season. So that's great.
Oh, that's so sweet. So, can you tell us a little bit about what exactly is book coaching
Mhm,
and different kinds of book editing?
mhm.
How are those things different?
So book coaching, that service tends to be more ideal for writers when they are still in the process of writing a manuscript, or if they have a book idea, but don't know how to get started on it, or they're in the middle of it and they're having trouble staying motivated, or they need some craft guidance. So they're not close to being ready to have editing, but they know they need the support and to hone their knowledge and skills a little bit more. And that's where the book coaching comes in. That's really the best time for it.
Mm.
And so that's me meeting with the writer one on one, typically either through a web call or on the phone. And each the program, so to speak, is tailored to whatever the project's unique, the writer's unique project and needs and challenges are.
Mm.
Um, as for editing, editing is that's what happens once the manuscript is done. It's complete, and the author has taken it as far as they can go. Um, and there are a few different types of editing. I'm only going to talk about the ones that I focus on. Um, so there is developmental editing, which is sort of the big picture edit of the manuscript. If a writer has questions about plot or characters, pacing, or if it's a
Mm.
nonfiction book and
Pacing is a
they
good one.
want, or if it's a nonfiction book and they're concerned about whether about the structure of it, or whether there's any gaps in the information that they're presenting to
Mm.
their readers. This is where developmental editing comes in. And in addition to sort of giving the writer a report with my high level feedback, I also go in and actually work on the manuscript to reflect that feedback. Um, there's also manuscript critiques, which is very much the same thing as developmental editing, except there is no editing. The
Mm.
editor goes in and looks at the big picture once again, and then simply drafts up the report based on their findings. So they're still looking at, if it's fiction, again, those areas of character, plot, pacing, or whatever the writer is most concerned about, or nonfiction, again, structure, maybe consistency in writing style, pacing again, eh, eh, you know, uh, all the big picture things, but also anything specific that the writer's concerned about. And as I said,
Yeah, that's so helpful.
yeah, and the difference between those two services is typically in developmental editing, I go in and actually work on the manuscript, but with the critique, I don't touch the manuscript at all. It's up to the writer to implement the changes on their own afterward.
It honestly kind of feels like surgery when you have to like go in and shift things around, like
Mhm,
pull this apart,
mhm.
put it
Yeah,
in. My
yeah,
husband asked
there
me
have
the other
actually
day, like, why does it take you so long to write a fiction? blog posts, I'm just, well, blog posts are all just my opinion.
Yeah.
Easy, fast, right? But
Yeah.
with fiction, like you said, trying to get the pacing right, the consistency where like you described a character one way over here and then you changed your mind and you forgot that you changed
Yeah.
your mind. And so it's, like so helpful to have somebody
Yeah.
with that outside perspective on it.
Absolutely. No, it absolutely is. And so the other two types of editing I do are line editing, which is a sentence by sentence edit where I'm looking at the prose and suggesting changes to it to make it stronger and more cohesive and consistent throughout the manuscript. So I look at things like
And having a
voice.
background in poetry makes you really good at that because
Mm,
poetry is all about every single word has to pull its weight and
hmm.
function is.
Yeah, absolutely. So concision, writing for concision is a huge part of line editing. And it does also look at some of the things that you would do in, let's say, copy editing, which is the last editing service I offer. And that's looking at basic spelling, grammar, punctuation,
Most
capitalization, and
people
whatnot.
associate with
Yeah.
editing. They're like, that must be it.
But the line editing just takes it a step further and looks at, does this sentence flow well? Could it be worded more concisely? Or are any, could, is there another word besides this one that would be a better fit for the context of what the author's writing about?
Yeah. And I love the idea too with nonfiction of helping to notice where gaps are. If
Hmm.
you're writing a nonfiction book and you're an expert on a subject, it's really hard to have that like newbie look. Like, what is your reader who doesn't have that expertise going to
Yeah.
take away? Are they going to understand it? Like, whoa,
Hmm.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Are there particular genres that you mostly work with? It sounds like you do fiction, nonfiction, children's, all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do a lot. This was, as I said, this was my first children's book. In fact, it's a friend of mine who lives in the same condo building and happens to be an indie children's book author. And so I was happy to help her out. But typically, what I focus on in fiction, I work primarily in speculative fiction, so fantasy, magical realism. I love magical realism, and I would love to get more of that. I also do YA fiction. And then nonfiction, that's actually the bulk of the work that I do. So I've done memoir. I work on business books, self-help and personal development books. I really love nonfiction books that, for any of those, for memoir, personal development, or business books, that if they bring a spiritual element into it, I love that. My spirituality is very important to me, and I've actually been working on ways to incorporate that more into my business the past year plus, which has been fun. Um, but and I've also worked on a couple of books about the craft of writing, so a couple of reference books as well.
Oh,
Um,
neat.
yeah, it's a pretty wide range, but these are all the genres that I read most often. And that's why I like specializing in all of them, because, and I find it fun too, because then sometimes, let's say I'm going from a nonfiction edit to a fiction edit, and they're so very different, but because of the, my familiarity with those genres, I'm sort of a chameleon in that way, where I can, not really a chameleon, but I'm able to, apply my skills to both genres, because I understand how both of them function. And I enjoy reading them, and I know what to look for in each kind of book, which
Yeah.
is the most important thing.
That does make a big difference because
Yes.
different genres have their different expectations and what the readers are expecting from them. So if
Hmm.
you're not someone who reads that genre, that can be really hard to edit it correctly.
Right. I mean, there have been a couple times where people have come to me about books like horror. I don't do horror, but I know other editors and book coaches who do work in horror. So
Mm, long.
I send the referrals their way. So it is important as an editor to know um, what you enjoy. Not just what you enjoy reading, but what you are most familiar with, and because that's where you're going to do your best work.
Yeah. Tell us about this new group experience. Is this something that you've done before, or this launch is like the first time you're ever doing this community embrace your book?
So this is a brand new thing that's happening this year. Oh, yes. So Embrace Your Book is a group book coaching program for authors. And it's similar to probably other programs that other people have seen. It's a long-term program. It'll be about 9 months. So if people have heard of birth your book types of programs, this is very much the same thing. And so it combines craft and mindset guidance with community support. And so the different elements that people, that writers and authors can expect during this program are um, 2 group Zoom calls a month, where one of them will focus on my craft and mindset guidance for the month, and the second one will be just a general group Q&A call. What's going on? What are some of the challenges you're experiencing? Let's talk about it. They'll each have some one-on-one time with me each month, because it's important that they have that personal time with me to talk about their projects too. There are going to be 2, I'm calling them writer dates. It's basically co-writing sessions where everybody can, if it fits their schedule, they can come on once a month, twice a month, or whatnot, and spend the time together just working on their books.
Mhm.
And there will also be an online community. I'm in the process of choosing what kind of platform I want to use for that. I've
Mm.
narrowed it down to 2 options, because um, I want to make sure that this is something that people who are not necessarily on Facebook can use. And so I don't feel that that's really going to be the best fit, because then it would exclude anybody who doesn't use it, or force people who don't want to use it to use it.
I often feel forced onto Facebook when I don't.
um, and there will be some other things that will happen throughout our time together. So like they might get some worksheets from me. I'm going to do some guided meditations during the time. So like
As
all
Kim
things
says,
that are
exactly.
exclusive, all things that I will be sharing exclusively with that group of writers and with nobody else. Maybe afterward, but not with anyone else at that time.
Mm.
And everybody who signs up for the program will also have like a 90-minute kickoff call with one-on-one with me, to sort of understand what their goals are and make sure that we are both on the same page about what they want to accomplish through the program. And yeah, that's, like I said, and other little fun things that will happen along the way too.
And as Kim just said, it's even just the accountability of writing with other people is so helpful.
Hmm.
I love that. Like when I do NaNoWriMo and I'll like go to the write-ins and they'll be like, we're setting a timer. How many words can you write in this time? Like stuff like that can really
Hmm.
help you move along. So what kind of outcome can people expect after 9 months? Are they going to have like 50,000 word manuscript done, something like that? Or what kind of things do people expect?
They can expect to, if they're, and I like to leave it a little bit more open, because some writers don't write as
Different
quickly as other
goals.
writers do. It
Mhm.
all depends on, everybody's speed. I mean, I've always been a slow writer. And so for me, doing something like NaNoWriMo is like, if I can do maybe like half of what everybody else would do, that would make me really happy. um, so so for me, the goal is you either have a completed first draft, or you have made significant progress toward it. Um, and obviously other goals besides that are, the internal feelings you would get, the satisfaction of having gotten as far as you have and making the progress that you've made with this kind of help. Um, and also just the feeling of having new friends who are writers.
Mm.
Because during this time, I mean, between the group calls and the online community, everybody's going to be having time to connect with one another. And who knows, they may end up scheduling their own time to chat with one another. That's not necessarily part of what I am going to be offering. I mean, they're open to, it's it's so the connections that they will develop with the other writers who are in the program,
Mm,
and the sense of accountability, of support and encouragement, um, and knowing that they can get through it even when the writing gets tough, because there are highs and lows to the writing process. And so it's really important to have people in your corner, whether they're writers like there would be in this program, or whether there's the non-writers in your life,
yeah,
who
writing can be
get
very
it.
lonely, can be very
Yeah,
isolating.
yeah. So this program is sort of meant to make it less isolating, and so that you have, um, gosh, there's a really great quote from, actually, I think that's on the webpage. I can look at it really quick. There's, okay, it's not word for word, but there's a really great quote from Stephen King about how writing is a lonely process. And Embrace Your Book is designed to make it less lonely and more of anything, and more joyful, more connected, more supported, more m- more of giving you the feeling that yes, you can write this book.
Mm, I love that.
Thank you.
So right now, I think on your website, a wait list up.
Hmm.
When is the actual launch happening?
So there's going to be a 6-week registration period. That's going to open the middle of March, so in about 4 weeks. Let's say, you would think I would have memorized the date by now. Um, Probably around March 15th or March 20th, it's going to be opening up for registration. Now there is a wait list, and people can sign up for the wait list, and and once they sign up, they'll start receiving messages that will talk about the program and the different benefits of it and things like that. Um, However, I am already opening up my schedule to what I'm calling Embrace Your Book Discovery calls,
Oh,
because I want to meet every single writer who wants to be part of this program before they register. Um, that way, that way I know that everybody who's on it understands how Zoom works, so they have the technology familiarity, because everything is going to be on Zoom. Um, but also so that I get to know them and their book and and what's going on with it, and they can get to know me, and that we have a chance to talk about the program. And I don't want to say it's an interview process, but it is. But that way, because I want to make
it'd
sure
be a
that,
nice fit for the community.
yes, absolutely. And if you book, and the thing is, if you get your call in with me as soon as possible, you can actually register before anybody else on the program,
Ooh.
even if it's not even open yet. So that's why the wait list is open now, to give everybody an opportunity to um, start reserving their spots for it now if they want to, before registration even opens in 4 weeks.
Okay. And so then the program will actually start what, in April or May?
May 1st, the very
Okay.
first thing we're going to do as a group is sort of a group introduction call on Monday, May 1st. And then the rest of the program will kick off from there.
Okay. And
Hmm.
what kind of time commitment are people looking at? You mentioned twice monthly Zoom calls. If people want to think about, okay, I'm planning out to do my book starting May, like
Hmm.
what should they block off?
Um, all the group calls are going to be 1 hour each. Um, and any one-on-one time with me, which would be once a month, will be 30 minutes. If they want to participate in the co-writing sessions, um, that's going to be about 2 hours each. And I say that they have access to these calls. My point, the way I'm going to do it is the 2 times that they happen each month, it's probably going to be a different time of the day.
Mm,
In that way, in case somebody can't make one like late in the morning or early in the afternoon, there may be an evening one that they may be able to come to instead.
nice.
Um,
Yeah. And then, of course,
and
they have access to the community. They can chat. They can meet each other if they want to have
mhm,
additional co-writing sessions with their friends there.
absolutely, yeah. And and one of the things we will do during our sort of like each like introduction one-on-one session that I have with each writer, we will actually go through and sort of say, figure out what their writing schedule could, can be during this time that they're going to be in the program. So that's something that we are also going to work on one-on-one before the program begins, so that by the time the program begins, or even if they want to hit the ground running and just go with it right after our introduction session is done, that way then they also know how much time they're planning to spend on their book each week as well.
Very nice. Oh, I love it. Okay, well, we have the description in the link. The link in the description. You're like, what are you talking about? The link in the description that has more information about this group program that is coming up, and you can get on the wait list, and I believe you can schedule your call with Sara from there.
Yes. Yeah. In each email, it will be very clear, because there will be a labeled button in each email that says, click here to schedule your discovery call. And that will take you to the scheduling page for the Embrace Your Book discovery calls. And then from there, you can choose your time zone, the date and time that works for you, fill out a quick intake questionnaire, and then, well, you'll have a spot in my calendar, and then we'll be able to chat about things.
Fantastic. Automation's my favorite. All right. So is there any other advice or thoughts that you would like to leave us with today?
Yes. And I had to think about it for a second. I wrote about this in one of my recent issues of my newsletter for my email list. And it's something that I've talked about recently with one of my one-on-one coaching clients. And it's the idea of imposter syndrome when you are writing. We have this book idea and we love it. And we know that we can see in our heads not only like how to structure the book, or maybe even what the front cover may look like, but sometimes there's a little, there will be doubt and fear that creeps in. With this particular client, she's writing a book about a particular industry that she loves. It was something that was more or less a passion of hers about a year ago. And then about 6 months ago, she actually got a job in the industry. And so now she has much more access to resources, to people she can interview to really round out the content of the book. Much more than she had, when we started working together. But when we were talking last time, one of the things she said was, why am I the one who's writing this book when I'm not the expert here? When there are so many people in my industry who know more than I do. And one of the things I told her is that, there are certain qualities and skills that you have that perhaps make you a much more ideal person for writing this book than anyone else that you work with.
It's kind of like, if you think about journalists, they're usually interviewing the experts so that they can then translate it to the rest of the world and the people who don't know that industry. So when you're the writer, you don't have to be the expert yourself. You can be the conduit between the experts and the rest of the world.
And that's actually a really good point. I hadn't even thought of that. No, and it's writing the kind of book that she's writing is almost like long form journalism. I mean, it's different because you have to take a different approach to it, and you have to write a lot more words. But
and of course, you still have to be knowledgeable in it, because you have to be able to understand what you're hearing from people who have more experience or expertise too.
Absolutely. And, when you have the passion for that subject matter, like she does, or like anybody else who's in a similar position that she is in, that's going to help you as well, because you will want to know more. You will want to learn more. You will want to be able to convey that newfound understanding to your readers. in a way that is going to translate well to the audience you are planning to serve. And so that's really my advice to any writers and authors who are listening and watching this today, is you are the most ideal person to be writing your book. So if you ever feel that you are not, take a step back and ask yourself, why am I writing this book? Why do I love this book idea? Why does this book matter to me? Why do I want to work on it? And once you have written down those answers, not only can you obviously refer back to those answers whenever you want, you can even post them somewhere where you'll see them every day, like at your writing desk or a corkboard or your refrigerator, whatever works for you. But you can turn back to that when you're motivated, when your motivation is lagging a little bit, or when imposter syndrome rears its ugly head. And then you look at that, and then you can look at that list and say, you know what, I really can write this book. And these are the reasons why I can do it, because these are the reasons I want to do it.
Yes. Love it. All right. Well, we will wrap up there. Thank you so much for coming and spending this time with us.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. It's been so much fun to talk with you about Embrace Your Book and all the other things having to do with writing and editing and book coaching today.
Yeah, we could talk about books forever, right?
Yeah, we probably could. Yeah. We probably could.
But we won't.
Well, because we also want to be we want to be respectful of each other's time as well as everybody else's time too.
Now that I'm all energized and motivated, I got to go work on my book.
That's exactly what I want to hear, Carolyn.
Yay.